Profaci-Gallo War, very first war that I recall back in the late 50s, right into the early 60s at least. There's no reason to tribute you. You're not a king, you're a boss, and we're not doing that. We pay up when we have a deal, and we do what we're supposed to do at that time, but we're not paying tribute. But Joe Gallo, he's crazy Joe Gallo, he's had enough. He said, no, let's kill one of these hostages, and let's demand $100,000. For the release of the others. That's what he wanted to do. Because of this, it escalates into a full-blown war because they betrayed the Gallos, went to kill Larry Gallo. Now it's open season. At this point in time, I think you're going to see evidence that it wasn't Joe Gallo that gunned down Colombo. It was... Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end, my friends. And as always, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. The Colombo family has been the most warring family out of all 5 families in New York. And yes, today I'm doing a mob-related story because my very loyal viewers always ask me. They love the mob stories. And so I try to do it when I can. I don't make them up. Not going to do that. But when something is appropriate or something comes into my mind or you ask me to do something and I think it fits, we'll do it. So today we do the Profaci-Gallo War, very first war that I recall back in the late 50s, right into the early 60s at least. And I remember this because I was a kid and my dad moved us out of Brooklyn to my grandmother's and grandfather's home in Long Island. They had bought a home out there in the mid-50s. And he was gone for a couple of days for some reason. And then one morning, very early in the morning, he comes to the house and he hadn't shaved. My dad had a heavy beard. He hadn't shaved and he looked kind of, disheveled a little bit for my dad. And he comes in and he gives my mother a hug. And I'll never forget, Joey Brancata, who was his soldier at the time, was on the front porch. And I can see through the window, he's kind of pacing back and forth, maybe standing guard, right? And I'm sitting on the step leading up to the second floor of the house where all the bedrooms were. And like I said, I'm 6, 7 years old. And my dad speaks to my mom a little bit. They hug. My mom's got a tear in her eye. Then he comes over to me, hugs me. We're talking for a little bit. How's it going? And this and that. He doesn't say anything, obviously, about the war. But he's there for about a half an hour, and then he leaves. And then I didn't see him for another couple of days. This lasted for quite some time. A couple of months we stayed down there. As a matter of fact, it was from that point that we really never went back to Brooklyn too often, honestly. Here's what happens. All right, everyone, when I was on the street, the reason I lasted for the time that I did and succeeded was because I always tried to stay one step ahead of the game. It's January already. You probably made your resolutions. I hope so. Maybe it's to work smarter, make more money, or just get a step ahead. Let me tell you, there's one skill that's running the world in 2026, no doubt about it, and beyond, and that's AI. We've all heard of it. We've come a long way since 2019. AI is not science fiction anymore. It's diagnosing diseases, amazing in the medical field. It's writing code. It's automating entire businesses. So if you want to take real control of your future, let me introduce you to Outskill. This might be one of the best things you ever heard, and I really mean it. They're hosting this 2-day AI mastermind, a live boot camp. It's this weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. You'll spend 16 hours learning how to build your own AI agents, automate workflows, and even launch AI-powered services that may pay you weekly. This is unbelievable. People, you got to be ahead of stuff. This is an amazing opportunity. People from marketing, finance engineering, it doesn't matter. They're all joining in because this skill touches every industry now. Nothing is going to escape AI. Trust me on that. And if you show up both days, you're going to get lifetime bonuses, the AI prompt Bible, the profit roadmap, and your own AI toolkit builder. It's unbelievable what they're giving away here. It's free for the first 1,000 people, thanks to me. So do yourself a favor, click the link in the description or the pinned comment and grab your seat. Believe me, this might be the smartest move that you make all year. Trust me on that. Look, I always wanted to be ahead of the game. I'm into AI right now. I'm going to be in one of these sessions for sure. I got my team going to it. It's one of the reasons why we're succeeding because my team is really on top of the AI. And this thing, Outskill, I didn't even know about it until recently, but it's amazing. So go there, people. It's an offer that nobody should refuse. It was, I think 1957, 58, around there. And Joe Profaci, who was the boss of the family, he was awarded that position when Luciano created the commission. You remember that back in the mid-40s. And he was the boss of that family, one of the 5 families. And what happens now is that Profaci, who I never really heard good things about, my dad didn't really like him, wasn't really a fan of his, said he was kind of greedy and, he was just not a good boss. So he ordered all his men to give a tribute of $25 a month to him, regardless of anything else they were doing. You had to pay up to the family. If you got into a deal, you hijacked a truck, whatever you did, you had to pay up to the family, right? On top of that, he wanted a $25 tribute from every member. Now, $25, this is back in the 50s. That's a couple $100 today. May not seem like a lot of money, but it was fairly significant at the time just because he was the boss. No other reason. Not smart. You don't do that. When I was in that life, if we did a deal on the street, we gave to the family. My kind of formula and my dad's formula was if I came across a deal and it was a street deal, it was illegal, whatever, I gave 25% of whatever I earned to the family. That was kind of the formula that we used. Now, if they were involved with me, they put up money, they were a partner in any way, then it was different. But if they had no involvement other than, it was a street deal, we gave them 25%. They didn't ask for a tribute. I didn't have to give a tribute to Junior. I gave him what I wanted to give him, at that time, but that's how it went. So now he says $25 no matter what, a couple of $100 today, right? Well, a lot of guys resented that. I said, wait a second, we got to pay up on something that we're doing. Now we got to give a tribute to the boss like you're the king. They didn't like that, especially some of the younger guys, They resented that, and they were pretty upset about it. And the Gallos were one of the factions that resented it. And they said, we don't want to pay. And then a major flashpoint occurs in 1959 involving a guy by the name of Frankie Marco. He had a very lucrative numbers business in Red Hook. He was in Red Hook, right? And he said, I'm not paying it. I'm not going to pay a tribute. I already got to give him a piece of my action. Now I got to give him a tribute? No, I'm not doing it. Well, the Gallo brothers, there was Larry, Kid Blast, and Joey, they sided with Umberto Marco. They said, no, we don't want to pay this either. But then something happened. Profaci goes to the Gallos and orders them to murder Umberto Marco. And he said, if you do that, I'll give you his policy business, his numbers racket. So what happens? In 1959, Umberto Marco gets killed, right? Probably the Gallos. I don't know if they ever, most likely the Gallos. But Profaci goes back on his word, and he doesn't give them the policy business. So now the Gallos are really upset. Profaci had kidnapped Umberto Marco's son and would not give him up. So the Gallos are really upset. They're really, upset, and rightfully so. You made a deal, killed a guy, you get the rackets, now you renege on it. This was Profaci. So the Gallo brothers at the time, they aligned with Persico's crew, and Persico had a kind of a gang then, it was called the Garfield Boys. And they were now opposing Profaci. So it was the Gallos and Persico, remember what I'm telling you, going against Profaci. And then in February of 1961, that's when the war really unfolds. What happens? Larry and Albert Gallo, they kidnapped 4 of Profaci's top guys. They kidnapped them. I believe there were 5. 4 for sure, but I believe there were 5 because my dad told me the 5th one was Joe Colombo. I don't know if that's true or not because it's not really listed that way and I haven't heard it, but I believe that Joe Colombo was part of them. But who did they kidnap? They kidnapped the underboss, Joe Magliocco. They kidnapped Joe Profaci's brother, Frank Profaci. They kidnapped Sally the Sheik Masaccio. That was my dad's first captain, Sally the Sheik, powerful guy. And they kidnapped another soldier. His name was Johnny Scamone. So they kidnapped him. And they're holding him on President Street where they had their club. And it was called the Dormitory, I think, the social club that they had, 51 President Street. Famous kind of street, if you remember, back in all of the Colombo lore, I would say. And the Gallos said, hey, we'll release these guys, but we want improved financial conditions. We're not going to pay the $25. There's no reason to tribute you. You're not a king. You're a boss. And we're not doing that. We pay up when we have a deal, and we do what we're supposed to do at that time, but we're not paying tribute. So now they're at a standstill for a while. Joe Gallo, he's crazy Joe Gallo. He's had enough. He said, no, let's kill one of these hostages, and let's demand $100,000, for the release of the others. That's what he wanted to do. Larry Gallo, his older brother, overruled him, said that's not going to accomplish anything. We're not going to kill any of these guys. And anyhow, this is going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's at a standstill. They won't release the hostages. Profaci's not giving in. And then what happens is that the Gallos agreed to meet with a couple of Profaci's guys. Now, here's the thing. They agreed to meet with the consigliere, that was Charlie the Sidge Lo Cicero. And my father told me at the time that he was one of the guys that went in to negotiate the release of the hostages. I have no reason to believe my father would lie to me. He told me, listen, you know, I was friendly with the Gallos. They had a lot of respect for me. And I was one of the ones they asked to come in to negotiate the release, because they wouldn't just speak to anybody. They wanted Charlie the Sidge, and they wanted my father. That's what he told me. So they go in. Now, let me tell you the story with Charlie the Sidge. I think I've told this before. I'm sure I have. But for some of you that are watching now and haven't heard this, Benny the Sidge, Lo Cicero, was a made guy. He was Charlie's son. And he had another, Benny had another brother too. So there was two brothers, and Charlie the Sidge was their father. Well, I'm driving Benny the Sidge home to his house in Brooklyn one time, and I'm ready to drop him off. And he says, before you leave, just wait. Don't leave until I tell you to. So he goes up to his door, he puts a key in, he opens the door. And I watch him, he's sticking his head in like he's calling for somebody. When nobody answers, he pulls the door closed, he comes back and he gets in the car. I says, Benny, what's up? And I never mentioned his name before, but I'm doing it now. He said, Benny, what's up? He said, well, I can't go into the house, nobody's home. I said, well, Benny, it's your house. Why does somebody have to be home? He said, no, I can't go in the house. I said, why not? Well, here's the story. Charlie the Cicero was murdered, and he was murdered because allegedly he was fooling around with another made guy's wife, daughter, sister. I'm not sure what the story was. And the contract was given to Benny and his brother, and they whacked their father, whacked their own father. Terrible, right? And he said to me, Michael, ever since that day, that was 30 years ago, ever since that day, I can't go into my house. My father's ghost haunts me in that house. And he just wouldn't, and for 30 years, he wasn't alone in his house. That's the life at times. But whack their own father? I don't know, man. Rough. Anyway, just a side story. But my father, allegedly, and Charlie the Sidge go in, and they negotiate the release to the hostages. They were unharmed, and that temporarily kind of diffused the whole war. But then Profaci didn't honor the agreement that was made when the hostages were released. And what happens? He starts hitting people in 1961. Gallo loyalist, Joe Gioli. He was murdered after being lured on a fishing trip or something. They brought him to a fishing trip, a couple of Profaci guys, and then they killed him. And then what happens? Larry Gallo. They attempt to murder him. Who did it? Carmine Persico at the Sahara Club in East Flatbush. Carmine Persico goes in with Sally D'Ambrosio, and they go to kill Larry Gallo. They were choking him to death. What happens? A cop walks in the middle of it, and Persico runs out. Now, wait a minute. You say, hold on, Michael. You just said that, you know, the Persico faction was loyal to the Gallo faction. He was. And then he switched sides. He went with Profaci. Who knows what Profaci offered him? Maybe he was going to make him a captain at the time. I think that was the deal. I'm not sure. But that's how Carmine got his name, the Snake, because he betrayed the Gallos. Carmine, the Snake, Persico, betrayed the Gallos. I have a little more of a story to tell about my former boss, Carmine Persico. I'm gathering some more information, and I'm going to interview somebody that has some real information, and this is all going to fit in. He was named the Snake for a reason, and he lived up to that reputation well beyond what happened with the Gallos. And I'm going to talk about it, and it's going to be mind-boggling to some of you, like it was to me, because at first I didn't believe it, but now the evidence that I'm uncovering, it all makes sense. And Carmine the Snake, my former boss, who I really liked during that time, he did put a contract out on me when I walked away from the life. His son, Alley Boy, baptized my oldest boy, John. And now I'm kind of turned off in a big way on both of them. And it has to do with Greg Scarpa. But we'll get into that because I'm going to do something very intense on this. And that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So now what happens? After that, the conflict escalates into a full-blown war. So the Persicos, because of this, it escalates into a full-blown war because they betrayed the Gallos, went to kill Larry Gallo. Now it's open season. And assassinations, attempted hits, it's going on for years. And then what happens? Joe Gallo gets imprisoned. He had a case pending. He goes to trial, gets convicted. He gets 7 to 14 years. I think it was conspiracy and extortion. Joe Profaci, he dies of cancer in 1962. But the war was never officially ended. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, this was negotiated, it's over, that's it. No. Joe Magliocco, he becomes the acting boss of the family when Profaci dies. He wasn't really well liked either. 1963, Persico. The Gallos were still in for it. He survives a car bombing. They went after him. He survives a car bombing, and later on, they shot him up. And but he didn't die. And I remember Junior always had he didn't have full use of his hand. He used to be by his side, didn't have use of his hand, and that was part of the shooting, the assassination attempt. So now what happens, it's kind of losing momentum after that, and then the commission steps in and they say, okay, that's enough. We're imposing peace, that's enough. No more violence in this family, it's not good. And you know, a boss in a family never has to listen to the commission. Nobody can tell him what to do. But obviously it's to his benefit if the commission is imposing something on him or strongly suggesting that, hey, enough, you should listen. It's to his benefit. You don't want to get the other four bosses mad at you. No, not doing that. So they kind of settled things down. And then when Joe Gallo went to prison, he was really the prime mover on this, more than his two brothers, more than than them. He was the guy that really moved this along. So he goes to prison, and it starts to simmer down a little bit. Joe Magliocco now, he's removed. He gets removed from being boss. Why? Because he had an assassination attempt against the other bosses, right? It was a plot. And he had Joe Colombo. He wanted Joe Colombo to kill Carlo Gambino and the other bosses. He wanted to take over everything. He wanted to impose his rule on all of New York. He gives Joe Colombo the contract. Joe Colombo says, no, this doesn't sit right with me. He goes and tells Carlo Gambino about the plot. So they call Magliocco in. The commission calls him in and said, hey, here's what's happening now. You're done. You're going to step down and you're going to get lost. That's it. We're not going to kill you because you're a boss. Joe Bonanno, who is also part of the plot, he sided with Magliocco. He wanted to take control. They tell him too, out of respect for you being the boss of the family, we're not going to kill you, but you're done. You're on the shelf, get out of town or you will die. That's when he moved to Phoenix. And you know, when you think about the book that he wrote, remember, Joe Bonanno writes a book, this ridiculous, stupid book, about how the Mafia was really a family, a benevolent family. He doesn't even use the word mafia. He makes it a benevolent family, but he lays out the structure and everything else. And if you remember, it was Giuliani who went to visit Bonanno after he read his book. And after visiting Bonanno and reading the book, that's what gave him the blueprint to go after the commission. It was Joe Bonanno. Why did he write that book? Did he write it to get even with everybody? Did he write it because he was an egotist, a narcissist? He didn't need it. He had plenty of money. He was living in Phoenix. He writes this stupid book. Anyway, caused a lot of trouble. Joe Colombo, who was a Profaci loyalist, because he went and informed the commission about this whole plot, they named him the boss of the Profaci family. And then for some reason, it was changed to the Colombo family. Now, people say, well, did Joe Colombo make it the Colombo family? Did he say, now this is officially the Colombo family and we're changing the name from Profaci to Colombo? He didn't do that. It's the FBI that names the family. So for some reason, they decided to call, the Colombo family, the Profaci family, the Colombo family. It's just like the Genovese family is still the Genovese family. It's not the Chin family. It's not the Fat Tony Salerno family. It remained the Genovese family. It's just whatever the government wants to do. So, and then finally, in 1963, a formal peace agreement was brokered between the Gallo faction and the Colombo faction, meaning now the Persico faction and the Colombo faction. At least we think so. Well, Michael, what do you mean by that? I'm not revealing that yet, but I'm going to. And then we're going to see how this thing unfolded and what I'm talking about when I talk about the Persicos, but not yet. So who does this? Raymond Patriarca, he's the boss of the Patriarca family in New England. he negotiates this peace agreement. He brokered the agreement in 1963. So allegedly, the war is over, right? Well, Joe Gallo's in prison. He gets out in 1971. He said, "Hey, I wasn't there when Patriarca did this. I'm not saying this war was over. I wasn't part of the agreement. As far as I'm concerned, it's not over." And the story is, I don't know if this is true or not, but the story is that Gallo now goes to Colombo in some way and says, "Hey, we want a financial payment because we were never compensated for any of this. We need compensation. The Gallo faction needs compensation. We're not buying into the fact that you're the boss here." Well, Colombo refuses, from what I'm told. And again, I'm getting this secondhand. I don't know if this is a fact. I'm a recruit at that time. This is the early 70s when it happened. So I don't know if it really happened, but this is what I was told. Gallo demands a tribute. Colombo says no. Gallo's still upset, right? Now they're saying this goes to the Second Colombo War. There was some unrest at that time. But here's the thing. June 28, 1971, at the Italian-American Civil Rights League rally at Columbus Circle, what happens? Joe Colombo is gunned down. You know the story there. We don't have to get into it again. Colombo leadership initially blamed Joe Gallo. It fit. Joe Gallo was still upset, demanded tribute, didn't happen. Boom, he's going to take out Colombo. Jerome Johnson is there. It kind of fit because he was a black guy, and Joe Gallo, allegedly in prison, was very close to a lot of the black guys in there. And allegedly, he sets up this Jerome Johnson to go and take out Colombo. You know what happened? Joey didn't die at that time. He lingered for 7 years until he died, but he was basically not functioning, right? And then what happens? April 7, 1972, Joe Gallo is killed. Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy. They gun him down. You know, that murder never solved. They believed it was somebody from the Colombo faction. Of course, it probably was. They're saying they blamed him at that time. They blamed him at that time for the shooting of Joe Colombo. You know, and after Joe Gallo's death, his brother Albert Gallo and the remaining Gallo crew, they were expelled from the Colombo family. That I know is true. Expelled. They got rid of them. They didn't kill them. They didn't want war after that, but they did get rid of the Gallos. They're out. In 1975, the surviving Gallo faction was allowed to join the Genovese crime family. That happens rarely, but every once in a while. So then the Gallos become part of the Genovese crew. You never really heard of them too much after that. They were pretty well decimated, you know, at that time. So, but let me get back to the Colombo deal. At this point in time, I think you're going to see evidence that it wasn't Joe Gallo that gunned down Colombo. It was the FBI. They set it up. And I'm going to give you very strong, I'm going to call it evidence. I'll call it evidence. It's not just supposition. I think it's strong enough. I'm going to be interviewing somebody that's going to give even more credence to what I believe to be true. And then I'm going to put the pieces together. It was the FBI that killed Joe Colombo. They hated Joe Colombo. They hated the League. They hated the picketing. I know. I was intimately involved in that. They hated it, and they wanted to get rid of Colombo because the League was really picking up steam. He was doing some great things. Trust me. And thousands of members. This was going to be a movement all over the country. It was a movement all over the country. Now, of course, they say Joe Colombo was using it to line his pockets and all of that. Listen, they're always going to put disparaging information out there. I don't know that to be true. I believe Joe Colombo was extremely sincere. I just sat down with his grandson, Anthony Colombo. Anthony Colombo Sr. was my good friend, Joe Colombo's son, my good friend. I just sat down with his son, who's going to give me even more information to prove that it was the FBI that gunned down Joe Colombo. You think the FBI doesn't do shady things like this? Go to Jubilee, just posted on Sunday, and watch me sit with 20 cops and debate them about how the FBI can be so underhanded, how they use informants, how they set people up. Watch it, okay? And this is what I believe happened with Joe Colombo, and I think I'm going to give you a very strong evidence to prove the same. So that's it, people. You know, I hope you enjoyed it. I know, again, I have to satisfy my people that love the mob genre. I get it. They do enjoy the stories. And listen, I'm here for you. I always say this. I appreciate you helping me build this platform. You've been very, very loyal to me. So I'm never going to totally go away. The next thing I'm going to talk about, or one of the things I'm going to talk about, is the difference between the Mafia in Italy and Cosa Nostra here in the United States. There are real differences, and I say that. There's, similar organizations in many ways, but quite different in others. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to do a deep dive into that. The mural behind me, okay? Again, is it a mural? Whatever. Behind the tapestry behind me. I started talking about doing a deep dive on each one of these members up there. I'm going to be doing the same. We're going to continue that. So you're going to hear the mob stories, but I'm also going to talk about other things. People, I know you want to hear my perspective on other things. A lot of it is crime related. When I talk about the government and the fraud and all of this, I'm not talking politics. I told you so many times, when people are coming across the border and murdering our people here and raping our women, that's crime. That's something to talk about. These are issues that affect your life. You want to hear my perspective. I told you, 2026 is the year of accountability. We're going to hold the Mafia people in government accountable because they're hurting you directly. Mafia, back in my day, we didn't hurt all of you directly like this government is, defrauding you, Minnesota, California, Chicago, all over the place. Accountability is what's going to happen in 2026. So you're going to hear my perspective on a lot of things, but I will never walk away from the mob stuff. I promise you that. So hope you enjoyed today, my friends. How do I always leave you? Same way, never going to change. Please be safe. Ladies, listen to me. I don't care what anybody else says. This is not political. You don't like ICE? Fine. Protest. You don't like police? Fine, protest behind the barriers peacefully, the way you're supposed to do it, legally and lawfully. Because when you get in the face of an officer that has a gun, who might be unstable, who might be incorrect, who might not be incorrect, if you're dead and he's a bad guy, you're dead anyway. He can shoot and kill you if he feels it's appropriate, whether he's right or wrong. So why would you chance it? And if your boyfriend or your husband allow you to be put in that situation, shame on them. Hold them accountable. We're there to protect our women. And guys, the same thing. Don't do it. I'm not saying these agents are always right. Maybe one of them could be wrong. Who knows? What's the difference? Right or wrong? You're still dead or shot. What do you need it for? It's common sense. Be safe, ladies and guys also. Be healthy. They're saying if you live till 2030 and you're fairly healthy, okay, you might be able to live to over 100 with a good quality of life. Do the best you can. Watch what you eat. My pizza now, the ingredients great. You're going to be hearing about slices pretty soon. My wine, we have non-alcoholic, very, very low in sulfites. Great stuff. I only put out good stuff, people. That's it. Pizza, wine, how can you beat it? Be healthy. And yes, I mean this. I'm a person of faith. I'm not perfect. I screw up at times. I'm a sinner at times, but I love the Lord. Jesus Christ is my Savior. He saved my life, gave a different plan and a purpose for my life, His plan and purpose for my life. That's why I'm alive and free. I believe that with all my heart. The evidence supports it totally. So when I say this, I really mean it. I don't just say it randomly. God bless each and every one of you. Your families, your friends, your communities, your neighborhoods, your cities and your states. God bless all of you. I want God to bless this country and help us here. We need help. We really do. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. And yes, I'll see you all next time. Stay tuned. The world doesn't need another wine. It really needs a reason to raise a glass again. A reason that's real. A reason that means something. Because most people, they drink to forget. We drink to remember where we came from, what we stand for, and who we still fight to become. We don't follow trends, we break them. Our bottles don't look like anyone else's because our story, it isn't like anyone else's. It's about freedom, about redemption, about family. That's what's inside every bottle. So, to the ones who think different, who live different, who drink different, salute.